Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Tattoo Homewreckers. This is a podcast where we talk about tattoos, life, and everything in between. I don't know what you were doing. And today we're going to talk about play and the Kinect. Before we talk about that, though, what does your gender feel like today?
My gender feels like a marshmallow floating in space.
Very specific. Does the marshmallow have a... Like, I'm thinking, like, human marshmallow. Is it just a marshmallow?
Yeah, it is just a marshmallow.
Just straight
like
up marsh.
A correctly sized...
Just marshmallow.
Marshmallow.
I thought of a marshmallow man with a marshmallow
No, I'm
plan.
not the Michelin marshmallow
Not the Michelin.
man.
Okay,
no,
cool.
I'm just a marshmallow. Just happily floating in space, minding my own fucking business.
Minding your own business, doing your own damn thing.
Yeah. What does your gender feel like today?
Feels like a hot coffee on a hot day. So, like, kind of uncomfy, but, like, you still want it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you're, like, kind of uncomfortable drinking it. That's what it feels like
This
today.
makes me want an iced coffee really bad.
Oh, well, I mean, you can always get a nice coffee afterwards. If you guys hear that scratching on the floor, that is Bailey walking around. Because, again, we have decided to record the podcast in our living room because fuck it, why not? It's our podcast. We can do with it whatever we want.
Yes, you guys get to always enjoy our kitchen.
Yes. But before we get into today's subject as well, sorry, my bad, I totally interrupted. I wanted to talk about, we were both in this place of exhaustion.
Yes.
And my brain does this thing where it won't let me focus on the tasks that I need to get done because it so badly craves rest and play. And, like, I had been stuck in that zone of, like, I just want to read my book for, like, a couple hours.
Yeah.
But that's a couple hours we don't have. You know what I mean? Or, like, I know I need a fitness, which, like, that's important to me. But thank God the Kinect exists.
Because the Kinect is both. Okay, so just let me back it up for anyone who's, like, I don't know, a child. And only knows fucking Wii, which is meh.
Wii is dope. I love the Wii. I love the Wii.
I don't like the Wii for the fact that when it came out, you could not play DVDs on it. That doesn't make any sense to me because the games were DVDs.
Right.
But you could not, it did not have a DVD option. So you had to have a separate DVD player, which made no sense to me. Also, I don't know if it was voice command. Was the Wii voice command?
I don't think so.
Yeah, the
Maybe?
Xbox is voice command. So you could, like, play movies. You could, like it's like OG, She Who Will Not Be Named, Who Is in Our Home. You
know what I just realized?
What?
So I made this observation earlier. I was like, yeah, the Wii is, like, the Apple product of, like, gaming platforms.
Yeah.
And I feel like the people who are more attracted to the Kinect are probably Android users.
Yeah.
And the people who were more attracted to the Wii were Apple users.
Yeah.
Because the Wii's, like, interface was just so aesthetic. And, like, the Me channel, bro.
Well,
pop the fuck off. I mean, I think you're right
because the Wii is very, like, Apple coded with the like all white shit. Yeah. And I'm not there for that. I want, like, Xbox. I want to be able to fucking talk to my device. I want it to be very practical, functional.
It is very functional, yeah.
And still, I can also add my own flair, which is also that difference with, like, Apple products where it's like, this is the aesthetic. And then fucking Microsoft is like, nah, dog, you can have whatever fucking fun you want. Here's the basic principles of our program.
Yeah, and then you
customize.
Yeah, you customize it for sure.
So
tell me about the Kinect.
Anywho, the Kinect, my current hyperfixation, which is wonderful because I very frequently, I think, forget how important play is. And because we do, like, integrate, like, rest and, like, moments of, like, gratitude and moments of rest in our busy lives.
Yeah.
We definitely don't integrate as much play, or at least I'm really bad about that. And then what happens there, and we'll talk about, like, hobbies in a second. But when I don't play, it also, it works with all of us. So it's not just, like, just me and, like, the fucking world revolves around me. But when one of us doesn't play, the other ones in the house also don't play because we all come from childhood trauma around rest and play.
Yes.
Which is why, like, when your body's like, yo, I need rest and I need play and I need to, like, not work and be productive right now, it's so hard to give into that because we all come with that messaging of if anyone else is being, and I say this in air quotes, productive, we must be productive.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So.
and for me, my household truly was like a case of like that play it's indulgent.
Oh yeah.
So it's painted as, yeah, like you said, like kind of like a bad thing. But when we have all each other on the same boat, or not even in the same boat, I think we're getting really good at like, hey, you do your thing, or like reminding each other, like, dude, you do need to rest. You need to chill out. I know that like you have a harder time when it comes to like, oh, I need to chill out, because it's really rare that I'm in work mode and you're in like burnt out mode.
Yeah.
I feel like it happens less frequently.
Yeah.
But it's also a pacing thing. Like we've talked about it before. Lou runs at 120 miles. That's your cruise control.
Yeah.
120
well,
miles
and then
per
I
hour.
had a realization. This leans into that like play productivity thing. I'm not going off on like a complete tangent. But I had a realization when Caboose and I were on that anniversary trip.
Oh.
And you know about this realization. You were a part of it. But
No, I'm just
we
excited
had
to
a
talk about it.
terrible weekend. There was like drama in our home, and there was drama like in our friend group, and Caboose and I are working through a lot of stuff in our marriage as we're trying to reconfigure what we want the next like several years to look like. And as we're trying to, I don't know, single-handedly fucking dismantle the patriarchy within our marriage. So there's a lot of shit happening.
Yeah.
And San Diego was not very like queer friendly, at least the parts we weren't in. So like I had my own trauma around that, which meant that like I had been on high alert, unable to rest, like freaking the fuck out. And then when we got on the plane ride to come back home, like I was feeling a little bit better, but I just wanted to like fucking chill. And that for me looked like the plane luckily had fucking like the TVs on there with like shows and movies and stuff, and couples therapy, which is where you literally just watch people have couples therapy.
It's crazy.
I love it. It's my idea of a great time. I listen to a lot of like therapy podcasts and a lot of psychological podcasts. And so like understanding psychology, I would assume anyone who's been here for more than one episode would know that that's a hyperfixation of mine, and that's like a forever passion. But I would messaged you about the fact, because we had like, you know, Wi-Fi on there. So I was like able to text you, and you're like, how's your flight? And I was like, I'm watching couples therapy. It's fucking epic. And then you had said something along the lines of like,
that's so impressive. I was like, I love that for you. Like you're just doing it for fun or something like that. Yeah. You're just watching this for fun.
And it made me realize that a lot of the things that I enjoy, or like the things that are like hobbies for me and really like fill my cup, and do not feel like I'm doing them for anyone else but me. So truly that sense of like a hobby that feels like it is purely for me and not for anyone else. Is learning. And it specifically, I love learning about anything. She'll fucking, I'm sure she said it in the past, and she'll fucking loves to tell people about it because it's really silly. She'll like walk in and I'm watching like the most obscure like bridge building documentary because I'm like, this is fascinating. But anything to do with learning feels really replenishing to me. And then I started thinking about it, and I'm still doing some more research. So we'll come back to this topic about productivity and the productivity culture, but how like with hobbies like mine, it can inadvertently shame people into being productive, because my hobby seems like something productive because we live in a world that says, if you're learning, you're doing something good.
Yeah.
Which means I then look like I'm always working because it's like, oh, well, you're doing this thing. I'm like, but that's like a good time to me. Like I'm being recharged.
Yeah. And for a while, like, I feel like I definitely internalized some of that like shame of like, oh God, like I guess I should be doing this. And like, I tried, you know, to watch some stuff for fun. But I now, after like really talking about it on the podcast, it's as simple as like, they ask you if you want a side of French fries or mashed potatoes. I like mashed potatoes, but I'll probably pick French fries. You know what I mean? So like, don't get me wrong. Every now and again, sure, I'm down for mashed potatoes. So that's like your version of watching like couples therapy.
Yeah.
Like every now and again, I'm down and I love it. Like I it's a good time, but it's not something that I would necessarily lean towards all the time.
And I feel that way about like, I don't know how to describe it and it not sound like almost derogatory, because I don't mean for that, but like shows like Parks and Rec, I enjoy them if they're on.
That's my french fries.
But I'm not going to pick them because that isn't my idea of like my first pick. Like my first pick, if I'm by myself, it's either going to be a historical drama so I can try to see how accurate it is, which also involves learning. Or it's going to just be straight out like, I'm going to listen to podcasts and I'm going to like try to consume as much knowledge as I possibly can without interruptions. And I think that is truly like that case of like, it can seem like, oh yes, well, you just think you're better than people. Cause I've gotten that in the past when we've like discussed about stuff that I enjoy. And it's like, no, it's not. Society decided that was a more, I don't know, like that wasn't a hobby. So it doesn't get put in that like play or rest area. Yeah. But also that it's this weird hierarchy of things. And I always thought that was dumb because it's kind of like how they said that about like, back when people started reading books for fun, they're like, that's going to rot your brain. And then we said the same thing about TV. And then we said the same thing about fucking computers. And now we're saying the same thing about phones. And none of which rotted your brains. But now because books are seen as like outdated, you get praised if you read a book, but you don't get praised if you listen to a podcast.
Yep.
And so I think it's just kind of that area of like, what the fuck? I guess the summation of this is, what does fucking play feel like to you?
Yeah.
Like, what recharges your batteries?
Regardless of what society says or feels about it.
Yeah.
Like, what, because that's the thing is, like, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's nice to, I'm sure it's a little bit nice to have no, I shouldn't say it's nice to have a hobby that's deemed as productive because it gave you a complex about having hobbies.
Yeah, because I genuinely struggled when it was like, hey, well, what do you do for fun? And I get that question a lot, and it seems quite accusatory because it's like, but I can find cleaning very fun. And like, I will genuinely enjoy that. I was vacuuming the backyard earlier and like happily just like, like it filled my cup and I feel great. And then it's really nice for me to have a clean space.
Yeah.
But also just the act of vacuuming, because if you're ever vacuuming AstroTurf, like it's a little mini workout. And like working out is another one of those things that like I think is super fun. But then isn't considered to be like a hobby in the sense that if I say like, oh, I'm particularly active in my body right now, or I need extra like fun or extra dopamine or extra rest, I will go and sit on the bike for an hour. And then people are like, well, that could be a problem. So I think it's this like...
Well, I mean, society kicks up in two ways, right? There's two parties that have the majority opinion, which is the first party is, well, you're a workaholic and you are punishing yourself and that's not a hobby. And then the second party is like, get a load of this bullshit. Sure, that's your hobby. Those are the two biggest points of view.
And then it's that hard part of like, because like you play video games and then I felt like, oh, I'm not like doing hobbies well enough because like to me, drawing is not a hobby. It doesn't feel like fucking fun, good time. I want to get the ideas out of my brain, but it's also not my first like place to go.
Yeah, that's not your french fry.
I have to run through the energy that lives within my body. And then I'm like, oh my God, now I can't wait to sit down and draw.
Totally.
But it's that like when people have things like Caboose plays video games as well. So you guys have these like very like conventionally like appropriate.
Yeah, hobbies.
And so where like mine got internalized as like I'm being productive, so you guys were being lazy.
Yeah.
My brain then said like when it flipped the other way was like, I'm not having a hobby. You're shaming people for having hobbies.
Yeah.
And like, you're also fucking weird for not having a hobby.
We almost like play into each other's like trauma around having hobbies. And like, but here's the thing, that trauma for me at least is released after thinking about mashed potatoes versus french fries. Yeah. Like, again, honestly, if it's not my first pick, that's fine. But that doesn't mean I love mashed potatoes any less. It's just not like my first pick. And that's okay.
And I think of it in that sense of like, you've heard me talk about this a bunch, so you're probably tired of it, but I don't think the podcast has, how Esther Perel, who, you know, if you know psychology and you know her, amazing, the best thing in the world.
If you know Lou, you know Esther.
Yeah, if you know me, you know Esther. I'd fucking just talk about her in her first name basis. But she had mentioned something about how couples like outsource something that they themselves do not like have or enjoy that part of themselves, or we're not raised to express that side of themselves. So you outsource those parts of other people. And that's what like, I mean, they've heard us talk about roller coasters, how like you taught me how to ride a roller coaster properly. And then I can outsource that like lackadaisical fun. Like it's only been over the last probably year to 2 years that I've been able to go on vacation and just peace signs up. I'm done. I'm not fucking being productive. I can fucking fully release. I don't have to worry about a fucking thing. And it's because like you do that. So I outsource that with you. So then when we're just wandering around Bellingham, getting fucking kind of lost, kind of not, because it's a pretty easy grid, but like taking an hour to walk 1 block backwards from where we originally started. And so like I'm able to outsource that play, that level of lackadaisical, like no responsibilities on to you, because that's how you'll operate. And then in those moments, you're able to also outsource the like impulsivity within safety. So when we look down like a pathway on like a park and you're like, oh, I wonder what's down there. And my ass is already walking down there.
Yeah, I get to outsource like courage with you, I think. Where it's just like, oh my gosh, like that. Like we talked about it when we were hiking. I say hiking very loosely.
Wandering around places.
Wandering around in Bellingham by the beach.
Yeah, in the woods.
And you know, I like you were like touching things and I was like afraid, and I'm like, well, it started to dredge up like a lot of memories of like, no, I was raised to like be afraid of everything and be afraid of the world and be afraid of the path, even if it's a man-made path. Yeah. You know, like just don't bother. But then you were like, well, that's such a disservice because fuck it, let's do it. And then I'm like, hell yeah. Like it's so fun.
Just don't put your hand in your mouth after you've touched stuff. And then that's like the only warning.
That's the rule.
That's the rule. If you touch things,
no eyes, no mouth.
no mucous membranes, and you're safe.
Yeah.
And I think like for me, really looking at it in that sense has also relieved like a lot of pressure off of me of like where I understand, because like for a minute there, it was like feeling very overwhelming when I'm like, okay, I don't get that like I have to be the person that remembers stuff. Yeah. And that would get really frustrating where I'm like, I mean, we said it this morning when we talked about recording the podcast, and then it was like, okay, you were like, I feel bad. And then I'm like, no, but that is a strength of mine. I am the person who remembers. Yep. And I loved how Esther had explained it in that particular podcast, which if I try to do my best, I'll remember to put it in the show notes. If not, just shoot me a message. I'll send you the link. But how she had said that, like, it's a beautiful thing because if I stopped reminding you of things, you would then turn to be like, oh, wow, like that sucks. Like you don't remind me of things anymore. So if I stop doing something that is like a intricate part and like a, I guess, pivotal part of our relationship, which is walking around being a human, like reminder, then after a while you would be like, wow, like what's happening here? And you would miss that. And when you start missing things, you'd be like, oh, fuck, I'm forgetting all these things. And so for me, I outsource the accountability that happens in like having you to then do these things with. And honestly, the courage that you have to put yourself out there gives me the courage to put myself out there. So it's like, instead of looking at it as a shortcoming of like, well, why do I have to be the person? I'm like, I actually love reminding people. But somewhere along the way, it got this mixed message of like, well, if you're reminding people, you're going to be a nag.
Yeah.
And these are bad things. And so now, like, something Caboose and I are working on is like, when I remind him, instead of him saying, I'm sorry, because that makes me feel bad, is him saying, thanks for reminding me.
Ooh,
and then
nice.
that's it. And so it's a way of like reframing it from me being like, oh, I feel bad that I'm the person doing this. And that's how I feel now with you guys like playing, is that when you do video games, I'm like, oh, you're right. I can do whatever the fuck I want to do. When you read your book, I'm like, okay, what do you want to do? If you want to do something that other people perceive as being productive, cool. But if it's like making aftercare boxes, which then feels to me like being a little kid doing origami. Yeah. Bitch, that's a fucking good time for me.
Yeah, period.
So when you come in, you're like, oh, I feel bad. Then it like tells me, and I'm not trying to put this on you.
Oh, no, I totally get that. Yeah. Again, we always play into each other's like traumas.
Yeah, because then you feel bad because you think I'm doing something that's not fun. And I think there's the importance of like looking at whatever the fuck it is that brings you joy And then letting people know, hey, this brings me joy. This is play to me. I feel like I'm doing origami. And just because it happens to be something that like other people deem to be productive, doesn't necessarily mean that I'm feeling productive when I'm doing it. I'm just like, oh, this is super fun.
No, this is perfect. Well, I mean, you feel bad whenever I edit reels.
I do. It's awful.
But it's not awful to me, you know? And that's the thing is like...
I feel bad when you cook.
Oh, dude.
Like, dude, that sucks so bad.
I mean...
But that's something I outsource to you.
Absolutely. And I love that we're having this conversation on the podcast because I want people to know that, like, even in healthy relationships, you do play into each other's traumas. Yes. Like, that is honestly, it's bound to happen regardless. Like, I don't care how healthy you are. And if you... I'm going to say something, hot topic. If you don't think that that's true, I would sit with that. I really would just take a moment, take a breather, and be like, am I not seeing something that I should be seeing? Because I don't know how else to describe it. I just feel like that blatant ignorance is probably playing into some trauma. Sorry, guys.
I hear that all the time in a lot of the like therapy sessions and podcasts that I listen to.
Yeah.
About the repeating of trauma. And that's something that like Caboose and I have definitely like had to really work on, was that like probably about 2 years ago before we started marriage counseling, I was like in this place where all of a sudden like the veil seemed to lift and I was like, your trauma and my trauma are what like got us together. That like I was always chasing that like need to be wanted as a child and that need to be seen.
Yeah. And
you were hidden away, which means that in times of conflict, you run and I pursue. And that is so incredibly painful. And all I'm doing is repeating this childhood trauma.
Yeah.
And he was doing the same thing where it was like, okay, if I just go hide, then she will come find me. And having that realization of being like, dude, at that point, like we've been together for 15 years. And like, what the fuck? This cycle isn't working. Especially because I was like, I don't want to live in these like in this sort of like trauma state anymore.
Yeah.
And through your and my relationship, which has been the healthiest relationship I've ever had in my life, I was able to see that and able to have these conversations around like, hey, when I do something that hurts you, you are comfortable enough to tell me and I am comfortable enough to hear it. And that I want that to happen in all of my relationships.
Absolutely.
But then it meant that like I had to go through all of the past trauma that Caboose and I have done to each other, which continues to happen. We literally had a discussion last night. I'm going to this is TMI, but whatever. My neurospicy friends will get this. And then we'll get back on topic for play. But whatever, sex is play.
There you go.
So I'd asked Caboose about lingerie because I don't particularly wear lingerie. But something that I want to do because I feel good when I wear it. And I asked him about it. And then you guys, I get it that you guys only know him like by proxy of the fact that we discuss him on this podcast. But the courage that like he has gained in his ability to tell me things is both a testament for the amount of work that he has done and the amount of safety that we've been able to provide in our relationship for him to be able to tell me when I was like, okay, so like, you're not really a fan of lingerie, but like, okay, in porn, do you like lingerie? Or like when you see women wearing lingerie, do you find that attractive? Is it a me thing or is it like a overall arching, you just never think it's attractive?
Right.
And then he sat with it for a minute and let's be honest, probably built up the courage to then tell me it's because of me.
Oh.
And it was like, okay, could you tell me more? Because in my brain, of course, there's part of me freaking out being like, it's because you don't think I'm hot in lingerie. Like,
yeah, but you're like trying to.
But I was like, no, I
give space
I'm like,
for this.
I'm also aware enough at this point of like the body that I work really hard at that I'm like, bitch, you look fine in lingerie.
Absolutely.
That's not it. So
that's not the problem.
Yeah, and that, by the way, is what healthy self-esteem looks like.
Period.
But then he told me it's because in the past, because there's a lot of like pressure around sex for me being like a neuro, like spicy individual.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pressure. And anyone else who's like neurodivergent will be like, oh, I understand that. Like, it's a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves to be like, are you in the right headspace? Can you stay active for this? Like, are you going to get distracted at the one random noise that's outside?
Focused.
Yes. Focus on the fucking thing. Also, are you currently in a place where like your body being touched feels like fucking fire? Or are you in a place that like the idea of like germs, like that person's germs and your germs, and they're touching and it's gross. And so there's lots of things that go into it. And if you heard that rant and you were like, what the fuck? You were so lucky. So lucky if that is not a part of your like thinking. But I would venture to say that a lot of people that listen to our podcast are probably somewhere in that neurospicy realm. So he had told me it's because in the past you've made like, it's a really big deal. You already have put a lot of pressure on yourself and have a lot of stress around sex.
Yeah.
And then that's just like one extra thing that you have to add on to. And I have for sure replayed that like situation of Jess in New Girl where lingerie gets like all tied up and it's confusing, and then freaked the fuck out. And so I was like, oh yeah, no, that makes complete sense why you would feel bad that you think that this is attractive, but then it's extra effort. And then this man added the final fucking like self-awareness moment when he said, yeah, it's because like, A, I don't want to have that pressure on you. He's like, also, I think I have worthiness like issues around you putting in extra effort when I, know that this is already hard for you.
Oh my God.
And like, because of that conversation, we were then able where I was like, okay, well, I want to do this also, and I won't get into that, but here are some remedies that like can help me with that.
Right.
So like, because we've done this like communication and worked really hard on that.
Yes.
I'm then able to be like, okay, cool, because I like dressing up. So then this is an extra area for me and him to like have play around and bond. But if we hadn't have worked on that like open communication, then like I would still just assume my husband's not in the lingerie.
Absolutely. And let's like, I mean, the vulnerability and the strength of it all. I mean, you guys have put in so much work and time and investment in your relationship that like you're now able to get to this point to have those conversations. And I fully relate. Like I need time to render things.
Yeah.
And that is something that I've been like really pushing on, working on, is like trying to like actually see through my feelings, because I actually struggle with it a little bit more than I had thought. Not in the sense that like I know exactly what I want, but I do get like stage fright. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I really do get stage fright when it comes to talking about my feelings, because it's hard.
Yeah.
And it's different. Like, I think it's really different with friends versus with a partner. Because with a partner, you're already like, oh God, like, I don't want it to be like offensive. What if they think different of me? Blah, 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 blah. But now it's like, okay, I've worked with my therapist about it. Like, be a loose cannon. Just fucking say whatever the fuck you need to say.
I really wish, I think that's why like it's important for me to share this stuff, is because I wish that like Caboose and I were able to do that when we first started.
Totally.
So it's where like now I approach relationships in that sense. My lisp is hella bad right now.
That's okay.
In the fact that I'm like, no, I would rather just be honest and always be a loose cannon, obviously trying to be conscious of other people's feelings. But it's like, no, if this is my preference, this is my preference.
Yeah.
And because like, yeah, it's taken us so long to be able to like vocalize how we feel about the other person, about how we feel about ourselves, like all of those things. And really like we grew up in a world that like we couldn't talk about that. And so now, because you and I are able to like say hard shit to each other,
for sure,
I'm like, well, if you can fucking handle me saying hard shit and I can handle you saying hard shit.
Yeah.
And honestly, every time you tell me something that like feels like it might have been a struggle, I love you more for it, because it gives me an understanding of who you are.
Yeah. Because I mean, I don't know if it's okay to talk about this on the podcast.
Yeah, you can talk about anything.
Yeah, you talked about your terrible weekend. We had a fight.
Oh, yeah. It was so bad, you guys.
And
so bad.
It's cute, though, because, like, I can sense our friendship really, like, growing. And it's crazy that it still grows to this day.
Yeah.
That we can be like, can we put a pin on this and just be light and talk about light things until you get home? Like, that was such a huge growth moment for the both of us. just feeling safe enough to be like, yeah, because we knew we were going to miss each other regardless.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, especially because, like, we were both going through things outside of our friendship, like, individually going through shit where, like, when Caboose and I left on that trip, I was already crying because, like, Caboose and I had been working through some really hard shit during the day around, like, his trauma around planning trips.
Yes.
And, like, once again, coming back to that worthiness thing of thinking no matter how much he plans, it's not worthy of, like, me, which is a whole other fucking thing.
Yeah.
So then, and then I was in the Reno airport crying, being like, I don't think you understand that I just want to talk to my best friend about the shit that I'm currently feeling because she is the only person that I can say anything to that will not judge me and that I don't have to worry about. Like, both you and I are good when the other, well, I think we're good about it with most people because it's something we've worked on.
Yeah.
But particularly with you, that if you say something that hurts my feelings, I do not feel a place of, like, defensiveness or attack. But I'm, like, curious about, like, hey, can you tell me more about that?
Right. Like, let's talk about it.
So, like, when you're talking and it's like, okay, but I want to know where this comes from. And I think that's that, like, true sense of, like, safety is, like, no, I want you to tell me your deepest, worst thoughts so that way I can sit with you and you don't have to be in that shit by yourself. So that was my weird tangent. I don't know how the fuck we got there.
I don't know how we got there either, but I'm glad that we did. Honestly, I think it's important too for people to realize that, like, again, with healthy relationships, you'll fight, you'll argue, you'll play into each other's traumas. There's a reason why you guys are attracted to each other in the first place. Unfortunately, that's just how it is. But, like, let's acknowledge the beauty of, like, sure, you might play into each other's traumas, but you'll grow from it regardless.
Yeah,
you'll
if
heal
you
through it regardless.
Are aware of, like, your triggers.
Thank you.
Also
preface with, like, you need to be very self-aware and also aware of your partner.
Yeah, and I think it's just about being curious. Like, I think that's probably been the biggest shift because, like, we've definitely the last couple years of our marriage have been the hardest.
Yeah.
And we've come through that because, like, now we approach everything with curiosity. And, like, especially, like, for him, it's been particularly hard. Just so you know, I have his permission to talk about this. So anyone who's like, this is fucked up, you can't talk about it. We've already talked about the fact that I have permission to talk about these things. But, like, part of that, like, heteronormative, like, male thinking is the sense of, like, anyone questioning you is an attack. So when I, in my neurospiciness, am like, please, I just want to understand because everything feels, like, better to me when I understand it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I am the level of autistic that the world is incredibly confusing because people just lie to you and you're supposed to just be like, and I'm talking about the simplest lie of, like, you ask someone how their day is and they say good. And you're like, but is it good?
I love the struggle. Are you for real right now?
Yeah, like, really? Have you seen the state of the world? Do you know what is happening in global events, in local events? Do you know what's happening with human rights? Like,
in our country,
but
like,
you're good. And so, like, as somebody who takes the world very literal, it's really hard for me to understand this, like, this social conditioning that we're just supposed to be lying to everyone. And so having to, like, unpick all of that where it's like, okay, but when I'm asking questions, I'm not attacking you, but also I'm quite blunt.
Yeah.
Because I miss those social cues on, like, how to say shit nicely. That's something I outsource to you. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. Don't worry about it.
Because I watch you have conversations and I'm like, this bitch be lying.
Yeah.
She be talking about how she's happy right now.
Yep.
How can she do that? And the more you unmask, the worse that gets because you're not able
afraid of that.
to cover those ranges of like, oh, now I can fucking pull a mask on and tell you I'm having a great day. Instead, like when Waffles got first diagnosed with cancer, which for anyone who's interested, she's actually doing really well.
The boiled eggs. No.
Yeah. And I think it's also the extra collagen. We've been fucking around a lot with her diet. I've been doing a lot of diet research on, like, cancer. I understand she's a dog. They don't have that much research. But I'm doing what I can to, like, feel like I can somewhat control this. don't come for me for that because I'm already aware of like
the intricacies
intricacies of that trauma.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think that's like one of those things that like for me, I guess circling all the way back to play is that beauty of like you can outsource the different types of play that you have the people in your life.
Yep.
So like I don't often think about, which is something I need to sit with, the fact that I am playful. I don't think about that. But then when like Caboose is in therapy, that's like the thing that he always brings up is that he's like, I just like that you play. But because my play to me is very like non-conventional, that's where like the Kinect feels like a merging of all of our worlds.
It does. It really does.
Where like it's the same. Like I genuinely somehow have blocked out the fact that I played video games because I'm like, yeah, I never played. I only ever watched my brothers. And then I pick up the Xbox was like my fucking jam.
Yeah, dude.
And
you know immediately what to do.
Yeah, I pick up the controller and I was just like doing shit on the controller, and it hit me last night. When Caboose and I were in the garage, I was like, I forget how instinctual this is. And then when I said about the fact that I'm like, it's instinctual because you've had so much practice on it that you used to play video games, but you just never did it when people are around because I grew up in an environment where like, if you weren't the best, you got heavily shamed. So I just played shit in private and then somehow have just been like, I will yeet that memory out of existence until I'm like playing by myself. And I'm like, oh no, bitch, you like play video games. And you guys saw that a little bit when we were in Disney last year.
Yeah.
And we got to play like Mortal Kombat. And then I was like,
randomly fucking good. I was so shocked that like in Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, Street Fighter specifically, this bitch, I was like, you're banned from playing this character, no more. And then you played a different one, and I was like, never mind, you're just fucking good.
But it's because I forget that like those things just come back. And then I have to sit with the fact that I'm like, oh, because you have been so praised for being a hard worker that any of your hobbies that did not fall into like intelligence or hardworking, you just denied ever doing them.
Yeah.
Where it's like, no, dude, you totally played video games and you just forgot. Because like you talked about Sonic. I was like, I fucking love Sonic.
I felt so connected to
And then I was like, wait, oh my God, you've played Sonic. And I have to sit with that to be like this narrative of like, oh, you suppressed all these sides of yourself because it didn't go along with who everyone else told you were. I'm like, oh, well, that's it. I have to like unpack that, which then leads us to connect, you guys. Let me tell you, my 37-year-old self is living their absolute best life, and I'm going to give the mic back to you in 1 second.
No, you're good. Go off. I was actually going to say, like, we need to end this episode with talking about the Kinect. We are talking about the fucking Kinect. So please.
So here's the deal. My hyperactivity is both in my brain and in my body. I'm fully aware of that. Anyone who has lived with me also understands that because like, I get the zoomies.
So bad. The zoomies are crazy.
And my brain never stops. So like I've talked in the past, I constantly listen to podcasts because it's the only way to take that hyperactive side of my brain and give it something to do, which is also partly why I'm always learning, is because that gives that side of my brain something to do. So the other portion of my brain, the autistic side, because they are constantly battling each other, can like have a little bit of fucking calm. And the Kinect really encapsulates the part of me that has like very, I guess, male traits in like ADHD, which is physical hyperactivity. So for me, when we put the big screen TV, which is about 2 weeks ago, in the garage, it meant that like now I was like, okay, wait, now there's she who will not be named, whose name starts with an A, in the garage, which means I can easily access like movies. So I've just been watching Bly Manor while riding the fucking bike. I keep saying elliptical, but it's not a fucking elliptical. But like the, what is it? A fucking assault bike. That's what it is. So then I'm able to get out the physical side while the like calm side of me is like, cool, let's watch this horror movie in this blacked out room.
Yep.
I highly, highly recommend it. It's amazing because there's no sensory shit and you just get to watch a movie and also you get to exercise. But then the Kinect is this like super fun way of me being able to play video games with you guys. And everyone has such different strengths. But just like the whole reason why I love the Switch, which is that like there's some pretty glaring glitches in it. So when you play the Switch
and shit doesn't work out,
and you go and you do the same exact like moves, and you hit the controller the same exact way, and then you just walk off a ledge and die.
Yep.
The Kinect does the same thing where it doesn't always register you. So the idea of having to be good at something is fucking gone. Because like you can crush that move in real life and the Kinect will be like, nah, dog.
Sorry, we didn't read that.
Yeah, we didn't read that. You fucking just threw that dart on the ground.
Yeah.
Or like when we're bowling, you can do like really unconventional. So like it's not like bowling in real life where that fucking 5-second walk from like you throwing the ball to then having to walk back to everyone else. And like, I still have shame around winning stuff. So if by chance I did really good, I feel really guilty that other people are not winning.
Yeah.
And then if I do really poorly, I feel really awkward that everyone's looking at me like it's really sad. And so you don't have any of that with Kinect because it's a completely unconventional way of playing bowling because you can do two hands at once and you're just doing shoulder circles, like aggressively, very fast, endurance shoulder circles.
It's so funny because your shoulders get blown the fuck up. And genuinely, the Kinect, God, it's so fucking fun because just random, like, body, I don't know, random muscles in your body start getting really fucking lit up. And you're like, wow, I'm working out. Like, it feels like I'm working out.
Yeah, we played a racing game and you have to have your arms, like, straight out in front of you. And you're engaging your core and your shoulders are blown up. And you're like, or like, fuck, dude, when you're sprinting and you're like just running in place, but you're genuinely sprinting in place.
Dude, Dance Central has got me fucking, like, actually dying on the ground.
Yeah,
like,
you're so good at Dance Central.
I go so hard at I'm the Dance Central friend.
That's me at tennis. I go so hard at tennis that my right shoulder was like, bitch, I need you to calm down.
Rest!
And I think that's the thing, I guess, like, in summation, Kinect is amazing.
Yes, we love the Kinect.
Part of, like, the thing that I want to talk about really fast about Kinect now versus when we were, because I think we were probably 22, 23 when we, like, when Kinect was a thing and we lived in an apartment and just, like, I'm so sorry. I'm just putting it out in the universe. I'm sure this person will never hear this podcast. But for our downstairs neighbors, I am so sorry. We were horrible tenants because we were, like, playing Kinect Adventures, jumping and doing all that shit at God knows what times of the night and just so loud. And that had to have been terrible for them because they just have idiots jumping on their roof.
Yep.
But now we have the garage. So like we really get to enjoy this like space for the remainder of the time that we're still in the US. And it is so nostalgic for me to go back. And now I can buy games that like we couldn't afford because we were incredibly poor at that point. So like one game was like a big purchase. And luckily, because no one fucking wants Kinect games, they're like $5 or $10.
Yep.
So now I'm able to like, explore games that I couldn't explore before, but also go back through and see where like on a personal level, all of these years of CrossFit and working out and like these different detours I've had in fitness have really paid off because I have way more endurance than I did before.
Yep.
And it just is that fun like hybrid of like where I don't necessarily want to be doing a bunch of CrossFit right now that doesn't feel like a good time because I really want to be like playing. This feels like play.
Yeah, because I think especially with like CrossFit and the workouts that we do, I get really in my head about form, which you should be in your head about form, how you're performing and how far you can go. And I think that the Kinect is truly fitness freedom, where it's like, no, honestly, like I'm not trying to think about my squat right now, but do I want to have a silly goose time doing air squats to Flo Rida on Dance Central?
I can't believe that worked. That you just
and my legs were blown the fuck up. Yeah, I was because there's like a little like mini game where it's like you get to freestyle. So instead of like dancing we did jumping jacks at one point, and you have to do it to the beat. And then I started doing squats, and I was like, how many squats can they get until I missed the beat?
I don't know how you stayed on beat, because I tried to do squats with you, and my beat was so fucked.
I'm the Dance Central friend, just saying.
You are. Yeah. I am the not Kinect Sports, because I'll just get bored and start jumping.
That was so funny. The water rafting ride where it's like you have to you have to duck and you have to fucking jump. I walked in on fucking Lou and Caboose just jumping, hitting the targets. Like, why are you? I was so
because we were like, this got dumb, so we just kept going. I'm the sprinting friend.
Yes,
Caboose has beat me once
sprinting.
And that video is on my Instagram, because also for anyone who watches this, wait for this shit. I've just decided that, and this will only last like 2 weeks because that's how I work on social media, but I want to only post motivational reels where it's like the motivational speeches, but to us playing Kinect.
That's really funny.
So that's all you're going to get, with the occasional tattoo thing scattered in there for the next couple weeks, because I find it really comical when they talk about like, oh yeah, push on, like you got this, fucking continue to lift weights, everyone's watching you, and we're just playing Dance Central or like Kinect.
Yep.
Yeah, it's fucking amazing. But that being said, we are about to play this game, which is a horror game called Rise of Nightmares.
Yes.
It is a zombie game, and so we end this very long podcast that was meant to be fully about play, but we got completely sidetracked because welcome to a fucking ADHD autistic podcast. So now we're gonna go and play in our blacked out, because I did absolutely buy curtains to black out our garage. So that way we can play a terrifying horror game, because my hopes is that it will be something just a little bit close to Little Nightmares, because that has to be one of my top favorite games of all time.
Little Nightmares?
Yes.
I'm so glad.
And I'm so glad that I just get to go along with the journey and don't have to play it.
The third one's going to come out soon. I'm so fucking excited.
Yes, absolutely.
We're going to get so traumatized.
Yeah, it was terrifying.
Well, with that being said, what was your win for the week?
My win for the week has been playing. I've been playing on Kinect almost every day. I did yesterday. I was going to say I did it. I only did it by myself yesterday. Yeah. But it's having a platform to play with you and Caboose. And wanting to invite more people in to come play feels very vulnerable for me, but also feels really good.
I love that.
So yeah, it just happens to be the exact correct console for me. Absolutely. What was your win for the week?
My win for the week is flexibility. I am learning to be a little bit flexible with what I want to do versus what I think I need to do. Physical. Bitch, no.
I was like, you've been stretching.
You fucking wish.
Okay, so emotional, mental flexibility.
Emotional and mental flexibility. I actually do need to do a lot of mobility. My body's been hurting lately, and take collagen. But that's besides the point. Emotional and mental flexibility. I think that for as long as I've known, I've been really big on no, this is how it needs to go. And if it doesn't go that way, then just give up. And this week, I feel like I've really exercised a whole lot of I don't know, just see how you feel. And then trust that that's how you feel. So I'm really happy with that. I love
that for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I would love to dig in deeper off the podcast for that one.
Absolutely, we will. So, all right, friends.
Yep. On that, please let us know what your version of play is. Whether or not the world decides it's play, let me know. Because mine is building boxes and filing paperwork.
Yeah. Apparently.
So good. Or doing math.
Or organizing my binder, which I'm so grateful for.
Yeah, or organizing the pantry. Any organization or anything that fits nicely into boxes. Oh, so good. Amazing. Tetris is one of the best games in the world.
I'm so bad at Tetris. So bad. Anyways, thank you guys for listening. If you made it this far, we really freaking appreciate you.
Yep. Subscribe, all the things with all the buttons.
Rate us 5 stars, and if it's anything less, don't bother.
And as always, if you have anything that you want us to discuss, just send us a DM.
Yeah.
I won't answer because I don't have our socials.
I will answer.
You'll
it,
answer.
So please just let us know.
Yep.
We appreciate the hell out of you guys. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. And we'll talk to y'all later.
Bye.
Bye, bye, bye.
Bro, I will never find this button.
I know. The struggle is so real. Do you see
Where's
the
the
cursor?
fucking
It's
mouse?
Right there. It's right there.
Okay.